Welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to start building a medieval town. So this is going to be, who knows how many parts, but I want to build an entire medieval town. So I have all sorts of different terrain pieces that could be used for medieval purposes, less per se, but I think I wanted to do a specific one, and medieval terrain could be used for a wide range of games. I would say most of the fantasy games and some of the historical games fit in that category. So these terrain pieces could be used for a lot of different things. I'm really excited about these pieces because I wanted to come up with a different way of building a thatched roof. I've done teddy bear fur, I've done the rope in other episodes, but I wanted to do something that nobody's done before. Well, at least I haven't seen anybody do it before. And something that's a little more really cost effective and really, fairly simple to construct. I found that doing the rope and even the teddy bear fur can be, you got to wait for it to dry. You got to put your PVA glue, and it's time consuming. Where I found this solution was a little bit faster. And I used something that's kind of, I think it's kind of crazy, but I was at the dollar store and I ran across party streamers. So, people hang them from the roof and, they turn two colors together and they kind of make them for party events and stuff. But what I really liked about the streamer is the texture that's on it. It looked like a thatched roof. Now, of course, it's square because it's, it's in rolls. But if I could just cut the ends off it and kind of overlap them, I thought I could make a pretty good thatched roof. So I tried it out. Didn't know it was going to work or not, but I wanted to do something a little quicker. If I'm going to do an entire medieval town, I wanted to do something a little faster. So let's take a look at the finished product. So this is I built two medieval farmhouses. I figure I'd start with that. I'm going to do a bakery and a tavern and, everything you would find in a medieval town down the road. Those are going to be the future episodes. This might even be like a 7-part series, but we're going to get through all the different medieval trains. I also want to do one with a water wheel on it and stuff like that, right? Okay. Anyways, let's take a look at what I've built so far. So this is the first one. And yeah, I used those party streamers for the thatched roof. And I'm actually really happy how this turned out. It came out really good. Let's take a look at the back of it. And you can see it's got a really good texture to it. It looks like a thatched roof. Let's take off the top. I made them playable, of course. And I'll plan on using these for Blood and Crowns and maybe Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff. But, like I said, these could be used for a lot of different things. So then I kind of wanted to make an L-shaped one, something a little different than the other one. So I had two different kind of farmhouses. This is your standard, really just basic structure, stone structure. I went with timbers instead of normally I use coffee stir sticks, just to give it a little more rustic look. Anyways, so those are what we're going to be building in today's episode, and really the first part of this medieval town. I can't wait to get all the different components together and have a whole game table of a medieval town that I can use for my Blood and Crowns and Dungeons and Dragons and such. So, all right. If you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down at the table, let's start painting, and let's start crafting. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the materials that I use for this project. We got our dollar store foam board, our ready board. We use quite a bit of that. I got some hobby shapes. These are from the dollar store, really cheap. You can get them in pretty well bulk there. They get big bags of them. Some more of that willow fencing that I got also from the dollar store. We got a little bit of balsa wood here, coffee stir sticks. We have regular popsicle sticks. And this is this is for party streamers, for birthday parties and stuff. We're going to make a thatched roof with that, which is going to be pretty cool. And then we got some regular foam. Now, some of these things I didn't end up using. I actually used egg cartons too, which I didn't put on that list. So I started with just to draw some generic shapes of the houses that I wanted to build. I got my miniatures. I just newly painted some of these more men-at-arms knights for Blood and Crowns, and I figured they would be used as the measuring stick, let's say, for this terrain. So then I just kind of drew the shape of the house on there with a ruler. So it's more straight lines, a little more accurate. I always measure the thickness of the foam board all the way around, take that in consideration, and also take consideration of the stones that we're going to put on the outside, so you want to have a little bit of space for that too, so it's not overlapping. So then I just basically cut out all my wall shapes that fit in the what I traced on top of the foam board there, essentially what I want my house to look. Kind of went with a square and kind of an L-shaped house. And I went with just a little over 2.5 inches tall, so a little bit smaller than my usual houses, but I kind of wanted to make them a little bit smaller. So I got my tinfoil ball, and I only did one side of the walls. Don't take the paper off both sides. So you want to keep the paper for a little bit of stability, and it doesn't matter on the outside because we're going to add stones to it anyways. So then I used my little hobby squares, and they were a good size for windows, so I just traced them. Traced it on the open foamed area, and the door I kind of just looked at my mini here and just kind of judged how big it was going to be. You know, I made it a little bit smaller, but you know, it'll be fine. It'll work out to the right size. But I just used my mini there to measure out the doorway. So I'm gonna do the same thing on these ones as well. You know, I'm going to add a few windows on here and a few doors, and really you can just choose whatever you want to do. I just picked a few different sides and added a little bit of interest to it. So then I used my hobby knife and cut them out. Still, make sure you don't take off that paper off the second side. And then I have them all measured out. So I have the doorways cut out, the windows cut out, but I'm not going to glue them to the base quite yet. We need to frame out our windows. So these are our coffee stir sticks, and I use them for kind of the ledge of the window. And we got some balsa wood here. I got two different types of balsa wood here. One's really, really skinny, and one is really thick. Now the skinny one, you could use like matchsticks. That would work good too. You can get those at the dollar store. Sometimes I just get the long camping matchsticks and just cut the ends off and use them. They're usually pretty cheap at the dollar store. So that's just after I framed it out. That's what it looks like. Just a pretty generic window style. Wasn't going to go too crazy on this. I didn't want to cross back over because that's not, I guess, for the time period it's in. And you can see I put a coffee stir stick on the bottom of the doorway too. So I just kind of completed all the framing out of everything. Now, it seems like a lot of work, but to prep it all, but then you're ready to go when the time is to glue it together. Now, I usually just glue it with hot glue. You could do white glue, but white glue, sometimes you have to keep it straight, and sometimes it dries crooked. I'd rather just get it done real quick. So I just use hot glue and glue these all together. This doesn't really matter right now because you're going to be covering all these walls and stuff with other details. So you're not going to really need everything there. So these are the willow fencing, and I decided to wanted a little more of a rustic look to my medieval farmhouses. I didn't want to have the straight up Tudor style. I think I'll save that for the tavern and maybe the watermill in some of the other structures I want to build. But for these farmhouses, I just want it to be just regular timbers and some stones. So I'm just kind of measuring them out and kind of have them on all the corners around the doorway here. You can see I put that piece of balsa wood over top of the door, and I'm going to put the timber underneath it, so it looks like it's kind of framed out with timbers. I figured that'd be a nice look to the whole piece. So I'm going to do that right now. That's what I'm kind of doing with my finger here. It's magic, right? I'm just showing you that's where I'm going to stick everything. So I kind of did the inside actually first. And you can see where I kind of put them. This actually adds a lot of support to the whole piece too as well. I use white glue to glue them on. Once they dry, it's actually really solid. It makes everything nice and rigid, and it has a lot of strength to it. All this wood that I've added to it gives a lot of strength to the piece. So now I'm going to do the outside. So I did the inside, now I'm going to do the outside. So you can see kind of what the decisions I made on there. And I kind of cut, you can see some of the pieces are cut at an angle, mainly because I want the roof to overhang a little bit. So I kind of just cut some of them at an angle. So now we're going to look at doing our stonework. So this is insulation foam. I cut them into long strips. That's a 1/2 inch insulation foam, by the way. And you can see I cut them into those different shapes. So this is time consuming. Now to get the round ones, you actually need to cut it with a box cutter. You can't really do it with a Proxxon. But all the square, absolutely, just, you know, if you have a Proxxon, just go ahead, save you tons of time and cut through those. But I just do them all by hand. This took me about 40 minutes to get them all cut out. And I stuck them in the tin with the rocks, shook it up for about 5 minutes, and that's what's left over. That's what these stones look like. So now I just use my white tacky glue. I got everything nice and framed out. It's nice and dry, so everything's good. And this is a good way to glue your bricks in, too, is everything's kind of framed out, and it's easy to kind of fit your bricks in there. So I kind of stopped halfway here just so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And this is what I did. I see how I made some of those stones round, and I kind of framed the bottom and the top with kind of rectangles and squares. Just makes it easier to put the stonework in there. But I do like the finished look of it. You know, just gives a nice rustic bottom to our piece here. Now, those ones inside, kind of looking at medieval houses at this time, and I went for the really poor farmhouse. They usually just had an opening in the top of their roofs, kind of like a teepee, actually. And they just had a little stone pit there they would fire to cook in and such and heat the house. So they didn't have a full-on chimney. So then I grabbed these egg cartons, and so this wasn't on the original list. I decided not to go with a popsicle stick floor, and I'd rather go with kind of a stone. So I scrapped the popsicle sticks and switched out with the egg cartons. And you can see I'm kind of making a stone floor. I thought that'd be more appropriate for these medieval houses. So make sure you use the paper egg cartons. They have a nice texture to them. Usually it's smooth on one side or they have a weird texture on the other side, but just use the paper ones. So I grabbed a little bit of that styrofoam, and I kind of didn't mention that at the beginning either, but I only use a little bit. It's their packing foam, and I just broke it up a little bit because I wanted to look like coals or ambers inside those little fire pits. And then I showed you I'm going to use starting the painting process. So this is black folk art craft paint multi-surface, what I use to seal in everything. So that's all on there. That's all completed. This is after it's dried. And now I'm going to work on to the roof. So the base is kind of pretty well fabricated and painted up, except for the doors, which I'm going to do separate. And you can see I painted the back. And really how I measured these out, I actually tipped the house upside down on a piece of dollar store foam board, traced it out, and then just used a ruler to straighten the lines out a little bit more, so I got nice straights like I'm showing you there. And then you can see that I've peeled the paper off the edge of it. And I just used my box cutter to skewer the paper a little bit, and you can peel it back. And that's going to be kind of like the edge of the roof. So I actually end up sanding those at an angle. Just what I'm showing you there. And that way, when you sit the roof on top of it, it'll be at an angle. It's going to make the roof a little easier to glue together. I decided to go with an entire foam roof. It's not actually going to have any real supports on here of any kind of wood. It's just going to be different types of foam. I just put cross beams, and really that's what's going to keep it in place when you slide it down on top. So it won't slide back and forth. So you just put those pieces underneath, and it can, double as like a timber on the roof on the bottom side. So this is after I've completed it. I spared you the second one, but it's just done the same way. So it was a little more challenging because it was an L-shaped. But you can see I got my little maze in the back here. It probably don't need as many, but I think I made a couple of them too short, so I ended up gluing a few other ones on there. Whatever, it works now. And it's just, essentially those are on there just so it stays nice on the roof. It doesn't have to stay snug, but just enough so, when you don't bump into the thing that just falls off. So then I started cutting the roof shape out. I kind of want these out an angled roof. And I kind of just did two sides first, and then I glued it all together. Originally, I did this first one in white glue, and I really don't recommend that. I would switch to hot glue. Again, you just have to wait too long for it to dry, and it becomes complicated. So then the other ends, you can see I just kind of carved out the edges as well, and they fit the edges that I put on there already. And really, I just took some hot glue and just slapped her in there and glued that together. So you should have two roofs like this. And it's worked out great, actually. This is a good design. I usually use like a skeleton frame when I'm building my roofs, but I wanted something a little more simpler on this one. So I just went straight up foam on this one. And I like that. It worked out pretty good. So, of course, I got to seal that in. So hit the black craft paint on there and seal those pieces in. So these are all completed. We're all ready to add our thatched roof. So I've been looking for all sorts of things to ease my pain on doing thatched roofs. And I was actually walking around the dollar store and I was just looking for things with texture. And I ran across these party streamers. And I'm like, oh man, is that going to work? It's like paper. It's really thin. So this is my sample piece. So I kind of went ahead and kind of made some. And it's a little square. And the final product is a little bit better than that. But I just wanted to see if it was possible to take would it take the paint and everything. And it did. So I started off with putting some white tacky glue. And this is kind of an important stage. Make sure you use the white tacky glue. Don't use hot glue or anything like that, because you're going to be able to you're going to have to manipulate it on top of the roof. Now, this stuff is really, really thin. And you can see I just used a pair of scissors and kind of carved up the bottom. Once it dries, you can even cut it up even further. But you can see how I pinched the paper. So I kind of just slapped it on where the glue is and I pinched it. I just want to have some more thickness to this paper, essentially, because if I lay it flat, it'll look flat. So and I kind of want to have the illusion of a thatched roof, but I really love the texture on these party streamers. So you can see I just kind of pinched them. It looks kind of like a curtain that you're kind of pushing over, and it kind of overlaps with each other. And like I said, you could go back with your pair of scissors and cut this further if you want to make it even more. I was thinking about getting a pair of, hairstylist scissors that it cuts every second spot or something like that. But I just went with my regular fabric ones. So then I just cut it into little sections like that. I cut a little bit of the edge of the streamer off so it's not as thick, because it actually is really thick when you first cut it off the roll there. So you can see I just pinched it again, moved it on next to it, and then you got a little bit of time to play around with this. And the cool thing about this is you can just bend it around the edges of the house. I didn't want to have, a kind of like an open area on the side of the house. I just wanted to have like a full thatched roof all over top, kind of like a hut. I went with that look. These are farmhouses. I didn't want to go with too much architectural design on this. Made it a little more simpler. So then you just do this process over and over again. You just go up top and do the same thing. Glue it on, pinch it, and go all the way around. And you actually get a pretty convincing thatched roof with this, which is, this is so much easier. And the cool thing about that streamers is they're really thin. So you could actually cut several of them at the same time and just go through the process really quickly. This literally took me like 10-15 minutes to do. It didn't take long at all to glue them on, and this saves me so much time than doing other forms of thatched roof. So I cut a hole on the roof just because I want to have a bit of an opening. I used some coffee stir sticks just to add some detail. They kind of would have had a flap that opened up, like I said, similar to a teepee or kind of like some Native American huts. But in European style farmhouses, I would say the more poorer houses, not very architecturally great. They just had openings in the roof, and they had like some kind of fire pit or something inside, and that just for the smoke to escape in. So then I went with the craft paint. Now I'm using a little brush, and this is kind of an important step. Don't take a big brush and cover it with a ton of black craft paint, because it'll really, really shrink it all, and you're not going to get the look you're looking for. So I went with a small brush, and you can see I kind of lick them up and kind of paint underneath. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the whole thing. But I say time-consuming, it didn't take that long, like 20 minutes, and I got these all painted up. But I'm just slowing down a little bit here for you on the camera so you can see what I'm doing. So I essentially just do the entire roof like that. And it'll actually look more like a thatched roof once you've added all that craft paint on there. So we'll go look at the roofs out here in a minute, but I wanted to start on the doors. And really, I just grabbed a bunch of stuff that I got from Michael's. This is all jewelry from the clearance section. I like to use for hinges, and I use some of these loops for the handle on the door. That's just coffee stir sticks and that really skinny balsa wood, but you could use matchsticks. Now, really, I'm only going to use the matchstick detail on the back of the door and the handles and the hinges on the front of the door. And I just use some white tacky glue and glued them together. So you got something like this. You got your two hinges there, your door handle, and they're not right to the edges because they have to fit in between the door. See, I got a bit of a frame there. So it just slides in there. And that was I wanted to do them separately because I wanted to paint them separately. It's hard to paint the door once you glue it in there, so I kind of left them separate. I'm just showing you to add black craft paint. So you can see how the thatched roof turned out fantastic with that black craft paint in there. And once it hardens, now you don't have to worry about too much of the situation with the paper being so thin. It actually hardens pretty good, and then you're able to get through the colors. Now I still, for safety's sake, I still continued on with, like, this is real brown is the first color I usually use. And then I'm using the same standard colors I always did, but I use a smaller brush for the thatch still, and use a bigger brush for the base. So I just kind of add a little brown to everything. I'm just showing you. I'm not going to cover too much of how I painted these things. I've already shown that on this channel several times in several of my builds. So I figured I'd save the time and just kind of tell you which colors I'm using and what order I painted them in. So this is the same standard process. This is the bark brown. It's the lighter brown. Again, I'm going to hit everything. And I continued on with the thatched roof with the smaller brush. I ended up using a wider flat brush for the thatched roof eventually, just so I can get some of those details. So this is all done. As you can see, the doors are going along as we're going through this. And then we got our Pablo, which is kind of just a bright orange. And I use that to highlight everything. I even hit it up on the thatched. I didn't cover everything on the thatched, just parts of it, just so you get some good interplays in color. So that's yellow ochre and real brown. I mixed them together, and this is kind of the same color I use for the docks on my when I paint docks. And again, you can see I'm using that wider brush now, and I'm just kind of going across the hairs instead of going up and down the hairs like I was before, just because I want to just highlight some of the areas. But you can see how well those party streamers leave details on there. It's great for, like I said, this worked out great for a thatched roof. All right, so now that I've done that first color, it's kind of a dull yellow. I want to brighten it up with some yellow ochre itself. Once we're done that and everything hardens, we're going to add some washes to the top, over top of that, some Agrax or shader and other colors. So you can see that's that flat brush I was talking about. It's a smaller brush, but it's a flat end. I usually paint my ships with those. The camel is going to be for all the stonework. So we're going to have to paint the inside stones, outside stones. We got lots of stones going on here in this project. The walls, I didn't end up using the that color on the walls. I ended up using another color later. So we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so this is after, and you can see I didn't go crazy with the camel. I just lightly added it on. I used a smaller brush too as well. I think I just used the same square brush. So then I moved to hardened leather, and really what I want to do here is add some to the details to the door. And I actually painted over all these timbers here. So this is a good opportunity if you're going crazy with your painting and and you've gone over onto your timbers, well, now you can cover it with that hardened leather. So you get the nice colored timbers. And I also did around the door frame as well. So then we got our contrast paints. So Skeleton Horde, we got Serpian, Serpia, Agrax Earth Shader, and this is Everland Sunset, which I'm going to use to highlight the roof again. So we're going to add some washes on there. I didn't go too crazy. It's just wherever I added a lot of yellow, and it's like a block, you can see on that one L-shaped one, I wanted to break that up. So if you put Agrax Earth Shader or some of those other washes on there, it breaks it up better, and you can see more of the details. I didn't want to lose the details that I had on there. That's Mummy Robe. I'm going to hit the stones again and brighten them up, as you can see there. Desert Yellow, what I ended up deciding to lightly add to the walls inside, just to add a different color in there. So then some speed paints, Pallid Bone. We got Commando Green, Malignant Green. We got some more Agrax Earth Shader. And what we're really going to do is we're going to really rough up the bottoms and the walls and the insides here. So there's going to be some moss and some grime on there, growing on there, and just dirty it up. So this is a black wash by Huge Miniatures, and the iron color by Huge Miniatures, which I really love for, like, this is the metal color for all these kind of hinges and stuff like that. I really love the way it looks. You barely even have to add anything to it. It just looks good the way it is when it comes out of the bottle. And then the black is going to be, we're going to put around where the smoke would come out of the chimneys and on the walls in the places. You can see all the green I've added on there. I added it onto the doors too, and I glued them in place. Once I've added all the colors that I wanted to them, all the washes, and I glued them in place. I'm just showing you all the smoke detail I put on there. So that's kind of implies that that's where the fire pit is, and it's kind of darkened the top of the thatched roof there and the opening where the smoke would come out of. So it's kind of a makeshift chimney, as like some of the other, like the tavern will probably actually have a real chimney on it. So I grabbed some Huge Miniature grasses, mossy grass, fertile overgrown. I got some other tufts here from other companies as well. And then I actually used some yellow grasses from Huge Miniatures as well, and some of their smaller tufts. So it's kind of like a combination of several things that I added. And I just did it around the edges. All right, so let's take a look at the battlefield. So I'm slowly building my armies. I got some men-at-arms, I got some crossbowmen, archers, and some, of course, cavalry. But I got a long ways to go. I mean, I want to have like 40 miniatures for both sides, so it's going to be it's going to be some time. But I figured while I'm building my medieval village, maybe I'll kind of paint some new miniatures all the time throughout and build my army as I'm building my terrain. So we got some new interesting miniatures to look at while we're looking at the town being built. Now, of course, I've substituted some of the terrain that I already have, and I probably could just make do with what I have for a medieval town. But I want to have some specific medieval buildings that have a little more of a medieval look to it than some of my other stuff that I've used for Blood and Plunder and some of the other games like Blood and Valor. So I'm just showing you the playability. Again, that's super important to me that everything is playable, that you can climb in it. Again, if you wanted to end up using this for Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, you can play inside of it. It's going to be cool to have like a whole medieval village would be great for Dungeons and Dragons. So just showing you inside the L-shaped one. And that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed these medieval farmhouses. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.